inspired, purpose, inspiration. Feeling like you have inspiration can give you purpose. And feeling like we have purpose can give us inspiration. But how do we actually get there, and how do we feel this inspiration on a regular basis? Welcome to Mental Fortress Monday. I am Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, and here on Mental Fortress Mondays, we explore the who, what, where, when, why, and how of mindfulness, mindfulness-based practices, and all of the things that can bring us emotional resilience and mental or emotional intelligence. We need a lot of resilience in today's world. A lot of people are struggling with so many things, and some of the things that can help with feeling like we have a purpose, feeling like we are not overwhelmed by external things coming in or internal things coming out and all of those different types of things, are feeling like we have inspiration and purpose. And specifically, purpose when it is inspired, and inspiration when it's linked to our purpose. And so this morning we're going to talk a little bit about how to get into that zone, and of course do a Mental Fortress mindfulness practice on developing that particular inspiration. So how do people actually feel inspired? How do they find that type of inspiration? Sometimes it's a little tricky. We want to develop, a little idea of how it brings inspiration into our minds, and often these happy things are really difficult to think of. In practice, during an initial visit and often during other visits, I'll have people think of something that really inspires them, and we'll do a couple things related to that. And sometimes it's hard to think of something. Similarly, get people to think of something negative, and sometimes that can actually be kind of tricky too, just to hold it in your mind. When we are thinking of something inspired, we want it to give us a particular feeling or idea so that we know that we're there. Can you think of one thing that even brings you a little bit of joy? Maybe it's something that happened in the last weekend, last couple days. Maybe it's a super fun memory that you have that has been from years ago. Whatever it is, what actually brings a smile to your face and kind of gives you just a little bit of that fill you up sort of feeling. And when you find it, and when you sit with it, and when you think about it, it gives us a particular energy within our body, a particular resonance that we can feel within our body, and that sensation. And that resonance and that sensation is what we want to bring more into our lives, what we want to hold on to, and where we want to sit and stew. The idea of stewing is often related to only negative thoughts, and the idea of stewing in positive thoughts can leave us with exactly the opposite of stewing in those negative thoughts. We may end up in fear, in anger, in negativity, whatever it is, when we end up stewing in this worry. And our goal as one of the components of mindfulness and of emotional resilience is to actually stew in purpose and to stew in inspiration. Because the more that we do that, the more we take on that resonance, the more that we're in that space, the more that we can be filled up with all of the things that these types of inspiration and purpose give us, which we'll get to. So when we feel that resonance and we feel that sensation within our body, we want to get to know it, get really familiar with it, so that we can quickly, more easily get there, so that we can recognize it when it's actually there. It sounds like, what do you mean recognize it? If I'm inspired, I'll be inspired. Sure. But if it's the beginning of an inspiration, if it's something little, sometimes it takes a minute. Sometimes it takes a minute to let go of our fears and all of the other things, the anger, whatever we're carrying that day with us, the stress, so that we can actually fully step into this full mode of inspiration. And so we want to take the time to do that. We want to get to know that feeling so that we can step into it a little bit easier and a little bit more. When we are in this space of feeling inspired, it means that our actions, our words, everything that we do takes on that reflection. I've been given the example before of if you walking down the street, wherever you're walking, even into a space maybe where familiar people, and you have a giant smile on your face and you just have a little bit of like, hey, how's it going today? Like, oh, I hope you guys are, feeling great. Or you say a comment because you're noticing these beautiful bright colors that somebody's wearing and you compliment them. That is contagious. And when we go in grumbling and whatever else, that is also contagious. So when we can feel inspired, we can inspire other people, we can have ultimately a better day and really a much improved quality of life. And that really is what all of this ends up being about. So when we're inspired, what happens? All of the good things. Our motivation goes up, our productivity can go up, our mood will certainly increase. We may feel less overwhelmed in the moment. We may be actually even affected less by stress, which is also really interesting. When we are in a better mood, we have more resilience. And so we do all of these things to help bring us into that mood. We have more energy when we're in that space. If you can even think to compare a time when you felt like you didn't have energy, felt like you were grieving, you were angry, you were frustrated, whatever it is, versus a time when you felt uplifted and happy and excited and all of these things. Where was your energy? What were your energy levels at a 10 if you were to rate them? I guarantee you they will have a drastic difference between the two of them. So if we can give you more energy for the day, give you more confidence for the day, feel like you're happier, feel like you're in a better mood, increase your productivity, all of the things that we want really or desire in life that seem to be, at least in our society, desirable. Although we can argue that productivity could have really any definition. These are all of the things that we want to improve. And when all of these things improve, our relationships also improve. And maybe we have a little bit more headspace and resources and energy to set goals and to be excited about the future and all of the things that inspiration can lead us to be or to have, and all of the things that a great mood and great energy can lead us to have. So in terms of thinking inspiring thoughts and holding that energy, we can think thoughts, we can say words, and we can take actions. And I would argue that the deeper that we get into that, if the thoughts are the first, the words are the second, and then the actions are the third, can actually improve that inspiration and that sensation, that resonance. It can exponentially increase it, as well as the time that we spend in that space. And if it's just one little thought and it passes, it's a very short time. If it's one little thought and we hold on to it, it can be a longer time. If it is something that you say, there's a thought and those words that come into play. And if it's something that you do, there's those thoughts and those actions that come into play. So either of those latter two will end up having more time spent in them. And even typically saying something will take a shorter time than doing something, especially if it's over a longer period of time. So if we spend more time in that resonance, in that energy, in that inspired space, then we get more familiar with it. We get to blow it up a little bit bigger in our lives. And then it gets easier to come back to. And we can be more filled up and ready for the day, ready for however long it even lasts. There's a contrast then of not feeling inspired. The idea of not feeling inspired isn't actually what separates us more from feeling inspired. It gives us that contrast so that we know. You can feel inspired and then maybe you feel really down another day. Those two things are very helpful. They help us to know when we're in that space. They help us to recognize when we're feeling inspired versus not, and we can get more familiar with it. That's perfectly okay. The part that does separate us more is when we beat ourselves up about not being there. And I see this all the time in terms of actually that thought of beating yourself up, but also with the idea of fear, that we get more worried when there's a fear that sort of trickles in. Instead of being aligned and in this inspired space and thinking these more positive thoughts or positive things, we get down on ourselves for not being there. Or if this happens in meditation a lot, and I hear people say these things, I'm not getting there, and so they get frustrated because they're not doing what they're not able to feel the sensations, or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. The only purpose is to make those attempts, especially when we're doing mindfulness activities, is to focus and pay attention. And if you are able to get your mind there where you're focusing and paying attention, regardless of how many sensations you feel or how much your mind wanders, if you're able to bring it back and you continuously do that within that split second, that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And it's not the idea that we're separate from that is a problem. It's when we are separate from that and then we beat ourselves up about it, that separates us much, much further from inspiration, from the task of mindfulness, from whatever it is that we're doing. It separates us much, much further than actually just the contrast of not being there. So that's something really to keep in mind. We need to let go of this beating ourselves up about it and actually just be in that space, recognize when we're not there, and realize that that's okay. It's okay that we're not there. It's okay that you're not feeling the inspiration. It helps us to allow that contrast to see it. So don't beat ourselves up around it. It will always separate us more. Recently, over the last weekend, what inspired this Mental Fortress Mondays is feeling inspired myself and being able to recognize all of those things that actually inspire me. And sometimes if it's been a long time since you've been in that space or had something that really inspired you, it can be harder to think of what it is that could do that for you and how to actually get there. And so in this particular context, I met some new friends and we had a powwow and I got to learn some things. I reconnected with old friends and they kind of helped to fix a bunch of computer stuff and sort of move me forward. And so now I'm going to be able to get some other work done. Still have some things to fix around it. But for me, having a bit of a mission, feeling like I'm bonding with people, feeling like I'm able to share something with others, feeling like I'm learning, and then feeling like I have a problem solved or this outcome that got resolved in some way, all of those things inspire me. And so having them all together several times in a row this weekend, I just feel super ready and filled up to take on the world. Maybe feeling like I have shared something with people and have a little bit of a bond with people as well. We are very social creatures as human, and I'm a bit more of an extrovert. So connecting with people really helps me to feel inspired and to feel grounded and to be able to go forward in my week in a very good place. So what is it that you get to feel inspired about? What is it, something around the connection with people that can make a difference for you? And if it is, figure out what environment you feel comfortable going into in order to create that. We do need to make those steps to create that reality for ourselves in order to then also feel inspired. And when we can feel a little bit of joy just with that thought initially, when we can say a few words, and then when we can really take those actions and actually go and be with people or, accept an invitation to dinner or whatever it is that we want to do, we can feel very inspired in all of those places. You do need to do a little bit of work to understand that for yourself. And if you're not sure, try them out and see actually what might work better for you. Especially if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you have a lot of negative emotion that's pulling on you these days, it can feel very relieving and very, it can just get rid of stress. It can get rid of that overwhelm to feel like you're in a space where you're in a better mood, where you have a little bit of wiggle room for that resilience to actually be able to come back to. When you find all of the different ways and the things that inspire you, and you can orient to that so that we can speak and function from this place of inspiration, from this place of all of those positive emotions so that we can then, again, increase our mood, increase our energy, increase our productivity, have our overwhelm and that emotional stress just decrease just enough that we can get through in a little bit of a better way. And then also to improve our relationships. And I invite you now to, if you have any thoughts or things that inspire you, would love to share them, because some of these can really help us to then perpetuate or recognize really what it is that can inspire us. Often, even just if I'm meditating, just thinking of sunshine on those rays on my face, feeling warm, that can feel super inspiring to me. And those thoughts can often change. So one day that's going to work, and another day it's not. Thinking of somebody who brings full joy to your life can really help as well. Often that's kids. Thinking of something funny they said or whatever it is. Something that brings a bit of a smile to your face. And when you're feeling this initial joy, this initial happiness, this initial inspiration, we want to sort of feel this feeling of expansiveness. Maybe even a bit of a space above our head, sort of this openness around us. And that can help us to affirm this feeling of inspiration as well, and sort of help to know that we're there. Not just something that kind of makes you happy. It's a little bit more than that. And so I invite you to join me now in a mindfulness meditation where we're going to explore some of these ideas and some of the ways of grasping our inspiration. So if you're comfortable, I invite you to sit down. Ideally, meditation of this sort is done in a quiet space, sometimes even inside, where you'll have fewer distractions. No distractions from the winds, from the sounds, from the light, whatever it is. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, I encourage you to do that. Again, it can help to turn internally and getting away from those external things that can distract us. And just pay attention to your breath for a few moments here. Just breathing in and out. And by paying attention to your breath, I mean that we can feel the sensation. We can feel our breath moving in through our nostrils and out through our nostrils. Just noticing when they move in and noticing when it moves out. Even just doing that can often really bring the nervous system down a couple notches. And when you're ready, I invite you to think of something that brings joy. Think of something that kind of lifts your heart. Think of something that makes you smile. If you're having trouble, when was the last time that you laughed? Or when was the last moment that you felt really good and filled up? Even just something that's comforting and feels warm, or a moment that you would always love to go back to. For me, this is just sitting in the sun on a rock near a lake with no breeze, just feeling that warmth that's comforting, warming. That to me is inspiring. Or thinking of a place that I went rock climbing in Kentucky or wherever else in the world, and just picturing these huge caverns with waterfalls and gripping the rock beside it, feeling physically exhausted and accomplished after climbing something, or even just exploring that area. When was the last time that you got to feel these things? And it can also be something little. When was the last time you went to bed early and got to celebrate that? And just felt really good for making that accomplishment of getting to bed early, as maybe you had a mission to do that. anything that brings a little bit of a smile to your face, a little bit of joy. And when you're thinking of these things, when you're thinking of these thoughts that can bring that little bit of inspiration, feel that expansiveness and openness above your head, sort of reaching up into the sky. Maybe it feels like there's something, an energy or light or something sort of radiating from you, or that you can feel just this light or whatever it is that you want to picture moving out from your body and radiating around you. When you have that feeling, just notice where else you notice these sensations in your body. Oftentimes people will tell me it's in their chest, their heart area, sometimes even their abdomen. Maybe it's in your head. What areas do you feel like you can feel this warmth and this light and this openness and this expansiveness? And if you don't feel it yet, keep searching for that inspired thought. Sometimes they're tricky to find, but they will be there. And when you have that sensation of this inspiration that you're feeling, just explore it. I've been saying mine's warm, but if it had a temperature, what temperature would yours be? If it had boundaries, where are those boundaries? Where are the borders? And does it move? Or do you just feel that expansion moving beyond you, sort of out into the world? And if it had a color, what color would it be? If it had a texture, what texture would it be? And just picture this inspiration kind of as an object that you're holding through your body. And just exploring it as it changes and as it moves. Even giving gratitude for the opportunity to sit and attempt for this. And remembering that the contrast of not feeling inspired is helpful and will help us to regain that inspiration and feel that inspiration at some point. And not beating ourselves up about it that we don't have it here now with us. That will only lead us farther away. We can have gratitude of this contrast, have gratitude of the moment that we are experiencing now. And that action, that thought of gratitude will bring us a little step closer to finding that inspiration. And then just feeling all of that sensation that you're able to explore or are going to be able to explore the more that you try these and the more that you test them out. Just feeling that light, whatever color it was, just expanding on beyond through your body, sort of radiating through all of the parts of your body and expanding outside of your body and above your head. Just seeing how big it can get. Sometimes it can get big and sometimes it's going to stay a little smaller, and both of those are just fine. And sometimes we don't have that light yet, and that is also fine. Just being able to hold that expanded sensation for just another few moments. And trying to ingrain it so that we can come back to this moment at any time. So that maybe even when we use the washroom today or take little breaks or whatever we're doing, that you can come back and be super mindful of what did this moment feel like so that we can actually return to it and get inspired for that next part of your day. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and wiggle your fingers and your toes. Give a couple good stretches. Thank you so much for joining me here on Mental Fortress Mondays. I would love to hear what inspires you. The more that we hear what inspires people, the more we're reminded of our own moments that we get to be inspired ourselves. Feel free to share. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Feel free to message me. I'm happy to cover any topics that you guys would like. If you have any suggestions, feel free to message me or to post here. Have a wonderful week. Take care.